talk a little boxing. We'll take you up to 2. Rich Quinones here. There's a pretty cool event, World Boxing Super Series, coming into play at the Prudential Center, which is a great venue in Newark, New Jersey for a little boxing. Richard Schaeffer, who had an outstanding run, former CEO of Golden Boy, and now doing some great work with his own company, Ringstar Sports, kind enough to join me for a couple moments on a Thursday. How you been, Richard?
Excellent. Thank you. Glad to be on.
Well, we appreciate a couple moments. Listen, this is another stacked card, and we'll kind of get into it. Gassiev and Wlodarczyk, you got some really good fighters coming out of Poland. You got the 2-time Cruiserweight champ. I'm just curious, though, what was kind of the idea behind the World Boxing Super Series?
It was really featuring the best fighters, the best fighting the best, and that's exactly what we achieved here. The 4 Cruiserweight champions are fighting each other. You have this Saturday here with Murat Gassiev, a 24-year young fighter, the IBF world champion, taking on a 2-time former world champion. So it really is the best fighting the best. Gassiev, by the way, is trained by the legendary coach of Triple G of Gennady Golovkin, Abel Sanchez up in Big Bear, and I just finished literally a few minutes ago the press conference here, the final press conference, and Abel made it clear that he believes that Murat Gassiev is even better than Triple G. And that's quite a statement. So a very special treat this Saturday at the Prudential Center to see a fighter who I believe will quickly become, pound for pound, one of the best, if not the best fighter in the world.
Listen, I agree. And you mentioned that he's trained by Abel Sanchez, obviously trains Golovkin, young kid. He's got power, 17 knockouts. I know there's been a lot of talk. Is he the next GGG? And I know there's a ton at stake here for him. You talk about the prize money, but this also gives him a chance to move on, make a statement, and route to the finals. Now, I watched a bunch of his fights, and it's hard. The scouting report on this guy is, you already know he's a great fighter. He's going to jab you to death if need to be. He's a pressure fighter. But what stands out for me, Richard, is that he's got explosive power in both hands, and he's got that lethal left hook, and he moves around really well. So I agree with you 100%. I go back to when he fought Lebedev, and he floors him with the left hook to the body in the 5th. And why do we like GGD, right? Because he's got the power. You can't stop him, and I think that's what we're going to see potentially in Murat going forward. Do you have anyone, I'm curious, with this type of card and tournament, if you will, you mentioned it gives the best fighters from all over the world a chance to fight. We're talking about a $50 million purse here in prize money?
Yes, it's actually the tournament is named after the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to really introduce the greatest fighters in the particular weight classes, but we wanted to really bring the prize back into fighting. It is prize fighting after all. And so we wanted to put together the greatest prize as well in the history of boxing. And it's a $50 million tournament for 2 weight classes, unheard of. Really historic, and I think that sort of adds to the fuel to the fire. These champions want to test themselves against the best, and there's a lot of pride at stake. But with this $50 million jackpot, you have a lot of money at stake as well. And these fighters know that they not only fight for legacy and world titles and so on, but they fight for a big chunk, a life-changing chunk of money. And I think that makes these fights that more exciting, because each one is going to give it his best. Each one trains to his fullest. Each one comes in the best shape of their life, because they want the title, they want the money, and they want the money which comes by qualifying to the next level of the tournament. In this particular case, the semifinals and then the finals. So lots at stake, and it really is. Each one of those fights so far in the World Boxing Super Series, those quarterfinals, have really not only lived up to the expectation, but really exceeded the expectation. And I'm sure Saturday is going to be no different.
Yeah, and that'll be Saturday. Of course, this Saturday, October 21st, Prudential Center, Newark, New Jersey. Tickets available at Ticketmaster.com or the Prudential Center box office. Doors for the fans will open at 7 p.m. First fight starting at 7:05. Now, you'll have broadcast rights on this? Is it going to be on several networks? Is it how are you working this as far as from a TV standpoint?
Yes, the fights are shown all around the world. Here in the United States, it is on an AT&T platform, former DirecTV audience network. which isn't available in about 20 million homes. But obviously, if you do live around the tri-state, I mean, the way to do it is to come and show up there. Tickets are $50,
which is cheap,
and I mean, it's unbelievable to see really one of the best, and against not just somebody, against the two-time former world champion, and just a totally stacked card. Several Olympians are on the card and so on. So really a lot of fun. So if you can, make it there, and otherwise. It is going to be available on the Audience Network as part of the DirecTV package.
Yeah, Krzysztof, one of those legendary fighters, come out of Poland as well, two-time Cruiserweight champion. Again, a couple moments with Richard Schaefer, Rich Quinones here. I'm curious, do you have any fighters on this card under your umbrella?
Yes, that's good. That's an excellent question. So I have three guys. I have a Cruiserweight from Nigeria, Porchi, and then I have Efe, the super heavyweight. From the Olympics. So he's a Nigerian Olympian. He actually won the knockout of the Rio Olympic tournament, best knockout. He's a devastating puncher, about 6'7", all muscles, really one of the biggest punches I've seen. He is promoted by Ringstar, and he's managed by the legendary New York manager, Shelly Finkel, who, among others, guided the career of Evander Holyfield and Iron Mike Tyson. And Shelly called me about this guy, and he said, Richard, I have a heavyweight who is better than Mike Tyson was. I said, yeah, right. And I
That's
said,
high praise.
Who are you talking about? Who are you talking? I said, this guy. And he told me about Efe, and we signed him, and he had so far 2 fights, 2 knockouts. I mean, boom, the guy lands, it's lights out.
Really?
Unbelievable. So he is going to be fighting on that card. And then I have a young fighter which we discovered lives in the border of Georgia and Atlanta, and his name is Money. And those who know me, they know I've been in the money business before, first when I'm doing my banking days, and then later on when I was the promoter of Floyd Money Mayweather from 2007 on, and did all of his fights until I left Golden Boy in 2014. And so for me to find a fighter whose actual name, this is not his nickname, this is on his birth certificate, Money Powell. He's actually Money Powell IV. His great-grandfather, grandfather, father, they were all Money. So this is Money IV. He is a super, he's in middleweight division, and he's a very lanky, like Tommy Hearns type of kind of fighter, tremendously talented. So he is going to be on the card as well. So I'm very excited to showcase some of those Ringstar fighters.
Yeah, you mentioned Pal Forno, kids from Germany, born in Alabama. I remember I saw slick hands. I go back to the fight. I think he stopped Ray Trujillo. How about this Solecki kid, the super welterweight? I remember him, a couple of his fights, Barrio and Finley. He's going to face Jack Kalke. Solecki's a pretty good fighter, right? Is he? You talk about the super welterweights. I've been hearing a lot about this kid.
He is actually with us now as well. His name is Sulecki, Maciel Sulecki. He is 25-0, and he is a tall kid, very very heavy-handed. His last 7 fights came by knockout. He was actually put in as an opponent by somebody to fight a young and rising star in the U.S., Hugo the Boss Centennial, about a year ago. And he won. He beat Centennial, knocked him out. So this kid is quickly rising up, and he's fighting actually in a world title eliminator. So keep an eye on Maciel Sulecki, and he's going in against this is clearly the biggest test of his career. Mm-hmm. He's fighting a former WBA world champion, Jack Kulke. So, this is what I like as well, because first and foremost, I'm a fight fan. I like to see evenly matched fights. Right. I like to see entertaining fights. I don't like to sit ringside there and be bored out of my ass, thinking like, oh, when are they going to start throwing? Right, exactly. No, I like to see entertaining, evenly matched fights, and that's what I'm known for as well, from my days at Golden Boy, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm very proud of that card we put together for Saturday night.
2 more quickies for you, Richard, and again, I appreciate a couple moments. This was a pretty ambitious idea and venture, so to speak, and I'm wondering, because you got to go out, you got to get some of the boxers in the world, and my background and having broadcast for well over 10 years and covering the sport for close to 15, I know one thing. Sometimes promoters, they're very reluctant when you start talking about tournaments where they don't want their fighters to go and sign, because if they're successful, maybe there's a shot that they'll leave their promoter. And I'm wondering, first of all, everyone's got to be on the same page here, right? The promoter's got to understand this is a good shot, good publicity, good a good venue, good opportunity for them to exposure. Did you get any type of backlash?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I have to say, internationally, globally speaking, excluding the U.S. for a minute, there was absolutely no hesitation. Many of the foreign promoters, whether be it from Russia or Germany or France or wherever, where all these England, including some of the biggest promoters from England, they immediately liked the concept, because what that did is you basically lend your fighter for a period of 3 fights, quarterfinal, semifinal, and final, assuming your fighter makes it to the final. The maximum you lend your fighter to your tournament is for 3 fights.
Gotcha.
And then your fighter comes back to you as the promoter. There's no options, no nothing attached. So you, as the promoter of a fighter, you would love for your fighter to participate in the tournament, because your fighter keeps busy, you don't have to pay your fighter, and you make money for doing nothing, because the promoter gets paid as well.
Right.
And if in fact your fighter wins, you have elevated the career of your fighter, you have made him happy, you have made him record-breaking numbers of money, and he's a much bigger star, and you own, when the fighter comes back to you, you own 100% of the fighter without any options or nothing, and so on. So, I mean, it's a pretty simple, straightforward
win-win
concept. It's a win-win. And unfortunately, here in the U.S., it was more of an uphill struggle, because here in the U.S., many of the promoters just want to protect their little sandbox, and they don't like to play outside of their own sandbox. And I think it probably takes a little bit more of educating to do, to really have them fully understand the concept that, hey, nobody is stealing anybody's fighter here. To the contrary, we pay you money, we pay more money to your fighter belongs with you 100%, doesn't infringe in any way, shape, or form on promotional rights, and it's really, why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah, I'm laughing too, because I know full well you're absolutely right. That whole theory where they take their ball and go home. Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah, no, and I think I mean, okay, so I'm a promoter, but as I said, I'm a fight fan as well.
Right.
I want to see the best fight, the best.
Of course.
And I mean, the Cruiserweight is a perfect example to have a tournament where you have all 4 champions, and you know that there's going to be, at the end of the tournament in May, when the final is, which, by the way, was just announced, that the final for the Cruiserweight is going to be coming from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the government put in a huge bid. So the international community, sports community, really recognizes the value of the World Boxing Super Series. And I think that's fantastic for the sport, because it really elevates the sport. And to have places like Saudi Arabia, or we were in Riga and so on, places which really haven't had boxing before, to suddenly being interested and wanting to attract some of those fights, elevates the sport, elevates those fighters, and it's really a big plus for our sport.
I also think, in closing too, last one for you, I think when you have these types of tournaments and you have this type, obviously your track record and a pedigree with Golden Boy, and before that, as you mentioned, your banking days, it speaks for itself. But I think this should help you when you have an opportunity. It shouldn't be challenging to sign some of these top Amis or these Olympians. It really shouldn't, because now all of a sudden they can see down the road the fruits of the labor, where they might be on one of these cards or one of these showcases, one of these venues, one of these tournaments.
Yeah, no, I think, look, I was very fortunate that I'm recognized among fighters as a pro fighter promoter about empowering the fighters, wanting to make the fighters the most money, and obviously Floyd Money Mayweather being the prime example, but many, many others. And that's why you really don't have any fighter who has anything negative to say about me, because I've always supported them. And when I went this last late summer, following the Rio Olympics, when I went after some of those most sought-after Olympians, whether it's a super heavyweight gold medalist, Tony Yoka from France, or the super heavyweight silver medalist Joe Joyce from England, or the most talked about U.S. Olympian Carlos Valderas, or maybe the best fighter talent, pound for pound, coming out of the Olympics as an amateur, a Montistan Jonas, who is trained by Freddie Roach. You know, I mean, and the list goes on and on. The first Mexican Olympian to medal in 16 years for Mexico with a bronze medal. And, you know, all of those fighters I signed, I competed against the Aarons and the De La Hoyas and the DiBellas and even foreign promoters, the Eddie Hearnses and the Hondas and so on. I competed against them, you know, head on. And I was fortunate that these fighters decided to go with me because they know my track record.
Right.
And they know that I have treated fighters right, that I have empowered them. And, you know, so I'm happy and that I'm back. I'm happy to be able to guide the career of these youngsters, but I'm happy to be able as well to increase the awareness of boxing globally with this global tournament, the World Boxing Super Series.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. I'm glad we had an opportunity to catch up. You got an open invite anytime you want to come back on. Saturday should be a good night, Prudential Center in Newark. You got a stack card again, a lot of bragging rights, a ton of money on the line as well. World Boxing Super Series. Richard, always appreciate it. Gracias por tu tiempo, my friend. I appreciate it.
Okay, all the best. Thank you so much.
Okay, you got it. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.